successful communicators. So, Brenden, welcome to the show.
ST, the pleasure is mine. Thanks for having me.
I know, I've seen you've been on like many different podcasts out there just displaying the message of communication in a way, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a big passion of mine for sure.
Like, what is the secret? I was like, why are you so passionate about this whole thing? And I see your videos, and you really talk about the importance of really articulating yourself in front of the audience and all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So the passion came from two main areas, ST, but it was mostly an accident. I always like to say communication chose me. I didn't really choose communication. So when I was in college, I studied accounting, funny enough. I thought I was going to be a CPA, a chartered professional accountant, because I love numbers. I never knew communication was a profession.
Right.
But then when I was in my first semester of college, somebody told me about these things called case competitions. They're kind of like hackathons in the tech world, but for business school, where executives come out and sponsor business problems, and as students, we present solutions, and the best solutions get jobs at the company. That's how these case competitions work. So think of it like professional sports for nerds. So I started competing in these things, ST. And then I get good at them, I get older, and then I start coaching for free all of the other students to help them win competitions. Yeah. And I just accidentally got really good at speaking, and that's what led to the YouTube channel MasterTalk. And the other piece is I was a venture capitalist in university. I wrote a lot of checks, yeah, we can talk about that if you want, but I wrote a lot of checks for a lot of startup founders, and I started helping them with their pitch decks, and that also sparked MasterTalk. So a lot of those guys can't afford a coach, so I thought it was crazy that this info wasn't free.
And I see that you've got like several thousand subscribers on YouTube as for MasterTalk, right?
Yeah, it was a grind to get to the number we're at now. Yeah, but I think we're doing well now.
No, but like, do you see yourself as someone like being the the thought leader of communication in a way?
That's my dream, ST. Absolutely. You know, I got really lucky in life. Obviously, we know great businesses are all about timing, and my timing was impeccable, right? I think I'm the only communication coach in the world right now who has 7 years of experience in the field, but is only 26 years old. So I definitely have a leg up, and I think I'm the only one who actually cares about making this information for free. So
yeah, don't worry. As they call it, the early bloomers. That's what they call it. But then again, I started podcasting just last year. I'm 28 years old now. So
there you go.
I'm starting life a little later than usual, which is not a big deal. But anyway, so let me just get to know more about Brenden yourself. Like, tell me about your background. You say you're originally from Canada, and then you kind of like, as you mentioned, you took part in these pitch competitions, you gotten better at communication and all that stuff. Tell me about your overall background, where you come from and everything.
Yeah, for sure. So parents immigrated from Sri Lanka in the early 90s. I was born in Montreal, Canada. That's where I'm based still to this day. And for those who don't know who are listening to this, Montreal is a city where you need to learn to speak French, which is a language I did not know. So my whole life, ST, I actually hated speaking, which is weird considering that I love it now, because most of my life I was presenting a language I didn't even know, right, when I was in first and second grade. And then I have a crooked left arm too.
Wow. The funny thing is, when I was in Canada back many years ago, that's where I knew a little bit of French back then, but not compared to what I know right now. But when I went to Canada back in like 2015, and I was like in Ottawa, when you cross the border into Quebec, the moment it just changes from English to French. I'm like, when I went to a local Walmart to buy something, the cashier just started speaking French, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm just right across the border. How the heck do they speak French already? It's like, okay, that's kind of where I was like, first of all, she was speaking to my dad, and my dad didn't know French. So I was like, what the heck's going on? And then I had to step in and just like, okay, we just got into kind of like a quick conversation, like how much is all this stuff and everything. It's like I just basically saved the day just because I knew French.
Yeah, it's not so bad these days, because most people in Montreal speak both languages. It's only in the regions of Quebec, like if you're in Saguenay, those like really deep regions that I actually have never been to in my life, those places, most people only speak French, yeah.
Anyways, keep going with what you're telling. What's your story?
Yeah, for sure. So I have a crooked left arm. I have a disability in my left arm. So whenever I speak, people always look at my arm, not my face. And you would think a communication expert studied in communication. Yeah, I got a bachelor's degree in accounting and I graduated in it. So I'm like the counterintuitive person to do all of this, which I think is funny.
Oh, I know. Now you basically went from a guy with a crooked arm to someone who has 33,000 plus. Is it 33,000 subscribers on YouTube or something?
Something like that, yeah.
But what is the journey like from when you, like, as you mentioned, you started off with doing these coaching sessions for these students, and then you kind of like found a way to build MasterTalk and all that stuff. Like, what was the journey like for you?
For sure, ST. So what happened was, once again, all of this was an accident. So the reason I started coaching them about how to speak wasn't because I wanted to be a coach. It's because I wanted them to win, and I'm ultra competitive. Think of me like the Michael Jordan that nobody cares about. So Michael Jordan, obviously people care about basketball. People have seen the Last Dance documentary on Netflix. The guy's crazy.
Yeah.
So I was the exact same way, personality-wise, but in a sport that nobody cares about, which is case competition. So I got away with it. So I just really like winning. So when I became an executive in the program, so how it works is that case competition pro is student run, like an association in university. So when I started winning and I became an executive in the program at like 20 or something, and everyone else was that age too, I just looked at the teams, because we pick who gets in the teams the year after. And I said, 20 of these 80 students suck at communication, even if they're really smart. So let me just coach them how to speak, because we have a comms coach. So I literally just figured it out on the spot. And then a few years later, I still didn't care about master. I never wanted to start a business. I'm like the anti-entrepreneur, right? There's like the born one, the made one. I'm the made one. I never was born to want to be an entrepreneur. And then in my last semester of college, when I landed a very lucrative job at IBM, I thought I was set. I was going to be a management consultant at IBM. I worked there for many years, and I thought I was just going to be an executive there. Until one of the 60 people I'd coached for free for 3 years just asked me a funny question that changed my life. And the question was, how did you learn how to speak? And I was like, well, what do you know? What do you mean? Well, Brenden, you're coaching all these people. You got really good at this. How did you learn how to speak? Did you Toastmasters? Did you hire a coach? Did you watch YouTube videos on speaking? I was like, who would watch YouTube videos on speaking? And I started watching all the videos, and I realized everyone didn't know what they were talking about. So I had the naivete to think I could do better.
No worries. Speaking is something that is not innate. You have to practice on how, and you got to practice how to do it, and you just have to really be good at it. It takes practice to be really good at speaking. So in a way, for me, I've finally learned how to communicate better because of Toastmasters, and even doing this podcast. If you were to listen to my first episode, I'll be kind of lost. And now 35, 36 episodes in, or even now, let's say 40 when you include recording, it's 40 recordings. It's like I get better at communication, and I'm able to really convey my own thoughts in a way.
That's awesome. I mean, same with me, by the way. That's why I leave my old episodes up. If people go watch my first videos, it's literally me in my mother's basement going, hey guys, welcome to MasterTalk. Like, I was terrible too my first year. So it's a journey.
But now going into, you say you now coach a lot of people at IBM, right? With how to speak, how to improve their speaking. Like, what was that?
Oh, no, you're all good. You're all good. So what happened was, so I start MasterTalk, my mom's video, I start making videos. At this point, I still don't think it's a business. It's just a hobby, right? Because I'm getting paid 6 figures at IBM. No one in my family's ever made 6 figures. So for me, I was just like rolling. Like, I was enjoying my life. And MasterTalk was just a joke, honestly. But then 9 months into the YouTube channel, I met my business partner in Columbus, Ohio, of all places, at Summit of Greatness, Lewis's event.
Wow.
For those who don't know, he's the host of the School of Greatness podcast. So I wanted to meet him. He's like my hero. So I met my business partner that was double my age, actually. And he looked at me and he said, you could charge executives thousands of dollars to work with you, right? And I laughed at him. I was like, come on, what are you talking about? I'm 23 years old. Who's going to pay me thousands of dollars? He's like, why don't you coach my clients? And he started paying me money. And I was like, oh my God, like, this is a business. And that's when I realized there was so much more to this. So IBM is just one of those examples. And I got lucky with that, honestly. There's not much to that story, which is I used to work there. So all of the executives loved me. So I was able to sign 2 or 3 of their executives to work with me. And I spread through word of mouth.
Right. And so why, just out of curiosity, why do we struggle so much with public speaking?
Yeah, the reason, ST, is because of the education system. So a lot of us, where do we learn how to speak? Whether you live in India, whether you live in the States, Canada, doesn't matter. You learn how to communicate ideas in the education system. But all of those presentations in middle school and high school and elementary school have 3 fundamental problems. The first one is all of those presentations are mandatory. You never wake up in the morning and say, hey, ST, you want to get breakfast and present all day? Nobody says that. So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is all of the presentations you deliver are never tied to something you're passionate about. So it's never, hey, ST, what are you passionate about? Are you passionate about media, startups, podcasting, entrepreneurship. No, you got to talk about Shakespearean poetry. And then after you're done that, you have to talk about the Renaissance, like a time period in history. And you don't really have much choice in the matter. And then the third piece is that every presentation is tied to a bloody punishment. So if you don't do a great job, not only do you not get a pat on the back, you get a slap in the face. So you grow up believing in math and sciences and French and Spanish and every single class that you take for the next decade that communication is a chore, so it becomes one, and no one wants to get better at doing the dishes.
Wow. Usually, because I remember when I had to do presentations in front of people, it was not very pretty because I had to just really explain the subject matter more than really expressing myself. Like, why should I do this and why am I liking this and everything like that? It's like, why can't I just present what I want to present rather than having to present this material hoping for like an A+.
Exactly, right? We're surviving through every semester instead of seeing it as something fun because the education system. Let me give you an analogy here. Why do most guys grow up loving sports? Not all guys, but most guys. The reason, in my opinion, is because the memories they have as a kid around sports is generally positive. So they'll remember the times where they played with their friends, a hockey game, a basketball game, a football game. They'll remember watching their dad speak. There's watching sports games with their dad. But if I thrown a basketball at their face when they were a kid every time they missed a shot, would they grow up liking basketball? Of course not. But that's what we're doing in communication with our children.
Yeah, in a way, it's very difficult. I mean, a lot, like there's a saying, like, you know, people fear death. People fear public speaking more than death, and that's kind of how. In terms of what you're doing with MasterTalk, it's become a full-fledged coaching business with your mentor. I think you're a mentor from Columbus, Ohio. Now going like fast forward to many years later, then you started becoming more of like the coach for how many different kinds of people?
At this point, I've probably coached 300-400 people in my career. So I'll probably coach thousands more for the rest of my life on a more, that's just private one-on-one. If you include, the stages I've spoken on, I mean, it's probably a lot more than that, but yeah, that's the
seriously, how did they put the thing is that, you know, a lot of people out there, they say, you know, someone at the age of 23, like why would they trust that person to be able to give them give them the direction how to be a good public speaker when, you know, let's just say, because, you know, if you notice that a lot of people who become coaches at a young age, they kind of are dismissed because of the fact that they don't have any experience, they don't know how the real world is like. But how do people really trust you as someone who's on the cutting edge of public speaking?
No, it's a fantastic question, ST. It was one of my the blockers in the business early on. And my average client today is 20 years older than I am. So my average client is 46 years old and I'm 26 right now. So how does that make sense? Why is that possible? And the answer is really simple. And I say this with no, with not being egotistical or anything. You just got to be in a business where you have an unfair advantage. Because I know you'll ask me about what tips to have in business. I am just infinitely better than most communication coaches in my industry. Not all of them, but a large percentage of them. And I'll tell you why. The reason is because if you want to be a great communication coach, you need to have a lot of energy to push your client to actually get the results. Whereas in my field, anyone who's currently at the same skill level as me or higher, which I would estimate that to be, let's say, 5% of the market, those people are generally 20 to 25 years older than I am. So let's say 45, 50, 55 years old. But at that stage of life, you don't really care that much about client service. You've already made a crap ton of money as a communication coach. You're speaking on stages for $10,000, $15,000. You won't actually go the extra mile. So a lot of my first clients, I remember one in particular, I'll give an example. He's the CFO of a wealth management fund. And the reason he worked with me was obviously he watched the YouTube videos, so he liked them. But the other piece, he's already invested in communication coaches before, and he never liked them. He was like, I'm not getting the result. And this goes back to Alex Hormozi's book, $100 million offers. You need to give an offer that people feel stupid saying no to. So I literally looked at the guy because I liked him and I was still early in the business. And I said, look, let's call him John for the purposes of confidentiality. And then I told John, I said, hey, why don't I just coach you for free for 2 hours and you tell me if I'm worth my salt? And he just said, well, I can't say no to that. That'd be stupid to say no to. I've tried 3 people and you're the only one who offered for free. So let's just do it. And then 2 hours later, he paid my invoice. That's it. And then after that, today, what happened, that's why I went B2C, not B2B, because B2B is really difficult difficult for me because there's ageism, and then I got to convince the board and
those when you work with corporations, man, that is not a very pretty sight because you got to convince so many different people. I work with a insurance company, and I can tell that, this is Fortune 500, and I can tell that when you have so many different people in the way, it's just really difficult to really convince them. Like, how do you convince this entire company that we're the right solution for your problem?
And the answer is we don't, right? So you got to play games. You got to play games that you can win at. So I have very little B2B business. Because I don't pursue it, most of my business is B2C, which is I go to an executive, I sell the executive, I get them results, and then after they get results, I say, open your damn Rolodex and invite 10 executives to my executive program. And they do it gladly because I changed their life. So the key in entrepreneurship is you don't want to sell someone who doesn't want to be sold. I'll never go to the CEO of JP Morgan and say, hey, you should work with me. The guy's gonna laugh me out of the room. He's like a 50-year-old.
Good old Jamie Dimon.
Yeah, he's gonna laugh me out of the room. It's like, who cares? Like, what do you know, little brown kid? You're like early 20s. I'm not trying to sell that guy. I'm trying to sell the software engineer at Facebook who's 35 years old, who's 40 years old, who's stuck in his career, who's an immigrant from India, and his white counterparts are getting the promotion that he's not getting. And those guys only trust me because we have the same skin color. So notice I'm selling the right profile than other people. So you just got to figure out what's your angle and how to win the game. And for me, it was Indian tech professional CEOs because they just trust me more. It was word of mouth from existing clients. It was executive women. So you just got to focus on those B2C plays and just have them make intros. The sales cycle is way shorter.
So what is the biggest hurdle you've had with MasterTalk? Let's just say, when you started becoming bigger and bigger and you got more clients coming in and you started building that trust, let's say, have you had moments where these clients were not a good fit for you and say, okay, you work with them for so long, but it's just they are not progressing in how they're communicating?
Sure. So here's what I'll say, SD. The only reason a client wouldn't progress with me at this point is if they're just not doing the work. That's why I always prioritize word of mouth sales over cold outbound. So I'd rather have somebody who's a friend who knows their friend. I'd rather work with that person than work with somebody that doesn't know who I am, isn't familiar with the work that I do. So the way that I approach is really simple. I just have a strong vetting process on the interview call. So people think it's a sales call, but in coaching, it's not really a sales call. Because a lot of times, if you're a good coach, you want to say no to more people than you say yes to. So what happens, actually today's a great example of this. Our lead funnels, I do a free workshop every 2 weeks. So the one I have today was 200 people registered for it. So there's going to be 80 people who show up. So I'm going to do a 90-minute workshop, then probably 15 or 20 of them are going to book one-on-one calls with me. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the top 3 or 5 people that I like out of that. So if people go I have this question on this, I'm at a point in my career, I just reject them. I don't care. Because for me, if you're charging thousands of dollars and coaching is 90% margin, by the way, if you're doing all the work yourself, 100 clients, you make 300 grand a year, right?
Is it like a solo venture, or do you have what do you call partners or assistants helping you out?
Yeah, so we have a small team, right? It's very lean. So I have 2 other business partners, Vamsi and Venkit, and we all split the revenue down. And then we have 2 contractors who manage my production and media for MasterTalk. So they'll do my thumbnails, they'll do my editing and all that stuff. So we're a team of 5 people.
So in terms of, in the coming years with MasterTalk, right? Is it going to be essential that more and more people need these communication skills going forward in their careers or in their personal lives or everything like that?
For sure, SC. So here's what I'll say. What I'll say is let me start the mission. So the mission behind what I do and why I'm building this. Sure, I'll do well financially and I've done well, but that's not really the end game for me. For me, the end game is the next Elon Musk is a 7-year-old girl who can't afford a communication coach, right? But since we don't know who the next Elon Musk is, it's really important that we make communication tools accessible for the world so that girl is smart enough to go on YouTube and just watch all my videos or do a workshop or things like that. That's my end game. And then how I get to that end game is coaching, because coaching is just a high margin business that helps you push that, and it makes me a better coach and facilitator and thought leader and allows me to share ideas more effectively. So for me, the 3 priorities is scaling my socials, scaling my client base, right, and scaling conversations on podcasts. Those are the 3 main things that I focus on.
That's kind of how you ended up on this podcast, the Next in Time podcast. Because the reason is that you will be, the purpose of bringing you on the show is because you're trying to make an impact in the world with communication and really trying to basically enhance people enhance the world's communication skills, and what is the importance of it? What's the end goal with what if you were able to, improve your communication skills, you're able to present yourself, that basically means more opportunities coming your way, right?
You got it, SC. The way I think about it is communication is about every moment of your life. It's not just about speaking on a stage, getting an extra sale, which is all true. It's the way you raise your family. It's the way you raise your children. It's the way that you make new friends. It's every moment of your life. So if you can't master the way of how you articulate ideas, you can't really get to the end result as fast as you would like to. That's why there's always 3 questions I always have people think about. The first one is, what do you want in life? Whether it's a job promotion, whether it's an extra sale in the business, whether it's a project, whether it's a wife, it doesn't matter what you want, right? That's 1. 2 is, who's the person who already has what you want? And this could be interpreted in different ways. It could be an executive you really admire. It could be the mother of somebody's children that you go, wow, that person is such a great mom. That person that you really admire. But the third question we never think to ask ourselves, ST, is the person who has what we want, what kind of communicator are they? How do they convey their ideas? Because the mother who's raising her children really well is a really good communicator. She isn't yelling at her kids 24/7. She's really good at managing conflict, right? The person who's a high-level executive or CEO isn't yelling at their team members. They're really good at changing their vocals, inspiring their teams. That's why I call communication the accelerant of dreams.
So do you offer different kinds of communication courses for different types of people?
So for me, it's one product, because that's how you get perfection. You just focus on a small suite of products, but the principles are the same. So for me, communication is like juggling 18 balls at the same time. So one of them is pausing, one of them is smiling, one of them is eye contact. So for me, the question is simply, what are the 3 easiest balls to juggle? But whether you're a CEO, whether you want to be a mom, whether you want to be both, whether you want to be an executive or a baby, it's the same 3 things that you have to master. So in my groups, you'll see a guy who's making 65 grand a year, who's getting his company to pay for it, but he's really serious about mastering his communication. He works at Oracle. And then you have another guy who's the CEO of a $10 billion company, and he has 100 employees. So, but the principles that both of those people learn is the same, but it's applied contextually in a different way. So let's say we take the random word exercise, which is my first tip. Take a random word like cup and create a random presentation out of it. The way that the CEO is going to apply it is saying, okay, I'm going to be dealing with uncertainty in the boardroom with my teams, and I'm going to be a lot more calm with the vendors. Whereas the 65K guy who's working at Oracle is going to say, well, if I could deal with uncertainty better, I could get a better job promotion somebody else and make $20,000 a year more. So the interpretation is different based on who you speak to.
In terms of communication, what do you think is the biggest challenge?
My opinion, the biggest challenge is consistency and structure. A lot of people think it's fear, and I fundamentally disagree with that. And the reason is really simple, because there's so many things in our life that we've done scared. Getting our first job was scary. Getting married was scary. Having children was scary. Getting on a first date was scary. Applying to college was scary. Everything we've done is scary.
Basically everything, even right now for me, it's like there's always this moment where I feel afraid of something. Even though even when I'm like 10 miles ahead in my career, let's say, if I've made a lot of leaps in my career, still I feel afraid of something. I don't know why.
Including me, by the way. Everyone feels that, right? Like the first time I coached an executive, you think I was super confident. I was like, holy shit, like I'm working with this person? Like, okay. I don't know why
How would they trust this young brown guy?
Right. And the answer to that, by the way, that I've come to terms with, and now I don't have those issues anymore, at least in communication, right? Yeah. Is really the idea that, look, I always like to tell people, my clients are much smarter than I. I don't think I'm smarter than them in any way. But there's one thing, just one, not 10, there's one thing that I'm much better than them at, and that's communication coaching. Like being a great speaker, I'm just better than them, right? Sure. But in the same way, they're infinitely better than me. Like they're managing big teams at AWS. They're doing such great things. I don't do those things. They're managing teams of thousands of people, but they are saying so many ums and ahs that it drives me crazy. So the key here behind expertise for me, as I defined it, ST, it's about being one chapter ahead of the next person in that skill set. So if I was a billionaire and I hired a piano teacher to teach me piano, the piano teacher doesn't care if I'm a billionaire or if I'm sitting at home doing nothing. She's just here to teach me how to play piano, and I don't know shit about how to play piano. So that's the way we gotta.
Because are you familiar with the Ramit Sethi by any chance?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think I've read one of his books where he always says that, where he says, I may not be in his books or one of his videos. It's always about being one step ahead of the person you're trying to coach. It's not about being like the best of the world when you're trying to coach someone. It's always being just one step ahead of that person. That's it. You don't have to be like the best of the best.
Exactly. And there's a great quote that I always love to share on this, ST, which is from Ali Gadet. He says, if you help one person, the world will give you permission to help everyone else. I didn't start with executives, right? I started with kids who are 15, 16 years old. That's what I was comfortable with. Then I started coaching people my age, that is students. Then I started coaching CEOs. Why is that? Because a lot of my friends were starting tech companies and they're in their early 20s. They couldn't afford a coach. And I wasn't charging back then. I didn't know it was a profession. So they just said, hey, I'm trying to raise 300K and everybody's charging me $5,000. Just, can you help me? And I said, yeah, sure. So I'd sit there and I'd help them raise the capital. And then I learned that, oh, wait a second, if I could coach a 22-year-old CEO, I could probably coach a 32-year-old software engineer at Facebook. And then I just kept going on and on and on until I just everybody.
So in the coming years, would you be planning on coaching like what I call let's say NBA stars?
Yeah, I'm coaching a few of them. Like, so today, you know, I'm super grateful, SC, you know, because, and the reason is because I don't like to take all the credit for this. It just so happens that my gift is really easy to spot. Because if I work with a client and they just become a much better communicator, they become a lead generation engine for the business. Because they go back to the boardroom, they're 10 times better, and everyone's like, what happened to you? And not always. Some people will just not talk about me because they keep it private. But a lot of them just go, Brenden Kumarasamy, he's the guy. They're like, this kid? They're like, no, trust me, he's the guy. And that's the key. But if I'm shit and I'm terrible at this, people also know. It's like, okay, well, I just worked with somebody for 12 weeks and they're not better. So clearly Brenden doesn't know what he's doing. So that's the idea. It's just in my business, it's really easy externally to see the difference. So all of my clients, like my tech CEO clients, are so easy to get me business because they go on a pitch comp and they crush every other startup. And everyone's like, what happened? They're like, oh, Brenden wrote my pitch.
Yeah, I think I definitely need to send some people along your way to help them with their pitching, because I see a lot of pitch, especially, you know, I run a startup event, and I see that a lot of people who are pitching, they kind of struggle with pitching or really getting into the time limits of, you know, they try to over communicate themselves, and that kind of causes a bit of an issue with the investor judges. So I feel like maybe if we were to send some to you, then you could, you know, help them out with how to really be strong, really be good with pitching in general.
Absolutely. And the reason behind that, ST, to add some value to the audience, is because especially in tech, specifically in tech, a lot of the talents, you know, the up-and-comers, the rising stars, have engineering backgrounds. So they're really good at building product. They're really good at getting the stack and getting the features and doing product iteration. But they're really bad at conveying the deep technical product that they're building in layman's terms so that somebody who's non-technical, who doesn't understand their stack in the audience, can go, oh, I see the use case behind what this person is doing. And that's the bridge that I help solve for.
All right, cool, Brenden. Yeah, I think we're going to wrap up this episode by asking this one final question, which is, as a communications coach, what would you recommend to visionaries who struggle with communicating and articulating their vision?
Great question, ST. And the answer is actually really simple. The best way to explain the future is to talk about the past. The challenge that visionaries have, ST, is that they see a future that doesn't exist yet, but that's very clear in their mind, but the world doesn't yet see that vision. So what is the best way to explain the future? What you have to do, and I'll do an example on the spot for everybody because I know it'll be valuable, is you say, this is what's currently available, and here's why this is no longer relevant for the future. Let's use Netflix as an example, which I think is super easy to understand. So Reed Hastings, the founder and CEO, I actually don't know, he's not CEO anymore. So the founder of Netflix, when he first pitched Netflix, the wrong way of pitching it is by going, hey, Netflix is a service that, you know, has advanced streaming technology that allows you to browse movies and TV shows online, which is cool in today's term, but in 1999 or 2003 or 2005, they're like, that sounds like of magic. Like, I don't think that makes any sense. So instead, what Reed should have done, which is easy, is, are you tired of Blockbuster, ST? You want to watch a movie with your family? So what do? You get in your car, you get to the Blockbuster, you drive 15 minutes there, you get to the Blockbuster, you find out what? That your favorite movie is already rented out because everyone wants the same bloody movie. So you pick up a second-rate movie, you go back home, you watch the movie, and then you forget to return it. So Blockbuster charges you $100 in late fees, which is 10 times more more than just buying the damn cassette tape. As with Netflix, not only will you never have to leave your house, you can watch unlimited TV shows and movies for only $9.99 and no late fees. What do you say? So notice how when I'm using the past to explain the future, people understand the startup more. Same thing with Steve Jobs. When he first presented the iPhone, people can look this up online. He always compared it back to the BlackBerry.
Right. All right, cool, Brenden. Thank you so much for coming on the Next Time podcast, and wishing you the best of luck with MasterTalk and seeing how the world will be able to be impacted with your strong communication coaching.
For sure, it's such a pleasure, brother. Thanks for having me.